A big part of me had to wrestle with the idea that re-signing a lease here didn't mean I was stuck. The living in the same town for more than a year or wanting to make my rental home didn't mean I was too scared to change, too scared for my life to evolve and grow, too scared to challenge myself and move to a new chapter. It just meant I was happy, content, growing in place versus moving on. I spent months crying and processing that my life is just different now than it has ever been. I have a community I'm not ready to leave behind. Just because moving is what I've always done, that doesn't mean I have to keep on doing it. After wrestling with the idea that I might spend 3 or more years living in this rental and coming to such a lovely place, a contentment and joy in this home, our landlords canceled our lease. An ironic twist just a week after investing so much time and money into redecorating our space for the years to come, throwing us into uncertainty in law offices, ending the stability and safety I searched so hard for. This home was always going to be temporary, but I just assumed it would be my choice to leave it. Maybe one day it will feel right to leave Durango entirely or move separately from my roommates. Maybe one day I'll buy my own home. As Taylor Swift says, I'll know when it's time to go. But sometimes we don't get a choice. Life happens, and you can't keep a moment in time in your pocket no matter how hard you try. Sometimes safety and security gets ripped away from you, a feeling I'm all too familiar with. Friends move away, relationships end, things change. And while I'm letting myself grieve the comfort I found in this place, I can't help but be proud that I found it, even if it was just for a year. And now I'm sure I can build it again anywhere I land. When I first read the email that we were losing our housing, our landlord's taking back the property to move back to town just a month after re-signing for another year, I immediately bawled my eyes out. But the first thing I said to myself after a deep breath was, it's not like last time. You're not alone anymore. And a calm washed over me that for the most part never wavered, despite the calls with lawyers and endless emails and Googling Colorado rental laws for hours on end. I knew that even if we couldn't find a new place or afford to move, me and Indy wouldn't be living in our car completely and utterly alone for an indefinite amount of time. And looking back, I know I wasn't alone then either. It's been almost 4 years. Back then, I had a couple of friends in Idaho who were extremely supportive, who let me sleep on their couches when I needed a shower and some security, who listened to me ramble on long dog walks about maybe going back to the man who had been hurting me for years despite everything. But back then, I was also guarded. I didn't let people help me, even when they offered. I didn't let people see how close to snapping I was. I didn't mention the abuse, the anger and anxiety, the manipulation and constant fluster that I had done something wrong. I didn't accept a free room when someone attempted to assault me in my car, and I didn't go to the food bank when I was struggling to feed myself. So I spent 3 months living in a field with Indy, telling everyone I was fine. And to be fair, those 3 months were honestly transformative to get me to where I am now. Someone who is now surrounded by an intertwined, beautiful community of support and love. Those 3 months of losing my home, of spending my days looking for housing that I could afford, looking for a place to land. 3 months of freedom, of bathing in lakes and rivers, spending my days crying at the sunset and dancing in the dirt. 3 months of sobbing alone and picking myself up to go filter water for Indy. I'm so glad I had that time because it showed me I needed to change. I needed to open up and cultivate community if I wanted things to be different. On hard days, being alone in that field was almost as terrifyingly alone as being trapped in that relationship. So when my roommates began to fluster, to spiral into what ifs and what are we going to do's, all I could do was smile and say we're going to be just fine. Because I knew, after 3 months of trying to manage PTSD and an attempted assault, not having enough money to eat while I didn't know how to feel supported, after 3 months of melting in the summer heat, trying to keep a 100-pound dog cool, and freezing as the early winter approached, layering every jacket I could to keep us comfortable with the first snow. Even if we all ended up unhoused, we weren't alone. We have a whole community, a whole town of people who immediately started helping without asking, who offered their couches, offices, vans, who started asking their neighbors and searching Zillow for rentals, who read and rewrote my emails to help us get us out of this situation, who asked how they could help and showed up when I needed them. This move has been unexpectedly difficult, not just because it ended up costing me hundreds of dollars that I really didn't have to spend, putting me in a little bit of a pit I'm hoping to start working my way out of soon, not because it came with winter storms and broken frames and having to move an elderly chicken 45 minutes north, but because I had to let go of the first place that truly ever felt like home. The first place in my entire life I felt myself relax into, that felt like the perfect fit. Despite living in a freezing, poorly insulated basement, despite the dryer that didn't work and the stove that burnt everything even when you were on low and the front door that only closed in the warm months, I felt so calm and safe. I could spend hours watching the light move across the rooms, sitting at the live edge countertop, observing how the sunrise illuminated and shadowed different elements of the La Platas. I could sit on the couch crocheting and feeding the wood-burning stove all night, breathing into the first signs of springs on the front porch, basking in midday bliss, walking Indy down the dirt road in the solstice of summer, wildflowers overflowing the farms around us, chickens scattering as we walk by. It was the perfect cocoon for me to harbor into while I unpacked the internal beliefs that led me to end up in that field 4 years ago. The core wounds that I've carried for 28 years that whisper into my heart that I'm not good enough, that I'm unlovable, unwanted. The wounds that bounced me from one bad relationship to another, trying to prove my worth to people who weren't interested in anything but exploiting and controlling me. Finally, I was safe. I could stop running, turn and face it head on. I've spent the past year and some change, not trying to heal the wound, but actually reopen it, feeling into those beliefs deeply, grieving the places I've let them lead me as punishment for trying to let others' attention heal them instead of just listening to the lessons they were trying to teach me. Debriding the dirt and grime that's built up, and through sitting in the sadness instead of trying to patch it up as quickly as possible before anyone noticed I was broken, something was unlocked, a safety within me, new core beliefs that defy those wounds. Stitches that I feel deep in my heart have already started to heal what I thought was previously unhealable, unfixable, forever broken. Losing that cocoon made me question if I would lose that too. The deep contentment and excitement I was developing for experiencing life without my desire for worthiness in the driver's seat. But now that I sit with it, I think we all have to leave the nest sometime. And no matter how much we prepare, it's always going to be difficult to leave safety and step out into the unknown, no matter how necessary it is to keep on growing. I don't know if I would have ever been able to leave on my own. I hope I would, but I was too comfortable. I was too afraid to let go of the first morsel of safety I found to realize I carry that inside of me now. And while I needed that safe space a year ago, there's nothing left to clean out. It's time to stop reliving the past. It's time to see where I go next.